The process of choosing a landing site is actually a balance between deciding on the main science objectives and trying to figure out which areas are the safest to land, and that involves usually doing a lot of scientific assessment using orbital data that we've acquired since the Viking landers in the 70s really, and also considering the engineering constraints, so making sure the surface is not too rough, making sure that the ground is not too soft that the rover won't be able to drive anywhere, things like that. So it's really a trade-off between the two.
One of the things that was a real challenge when we were told about the ExoMars landing site process was actually how little of the surface we get to choose from. And that's because certain areas of higher ground are ruled out. We're not allowed to go too far north, not allowed to go too far south. So actually it was quite a challenge to find a scientifically compelling place to go within these constraints. So just to demonstrate what I mean, this is a map of the central part of Mars around here. When you turn on what we call the filters, you can see these black areas. These are the areas that are all ruled out. So actually there's not really many places left to go. And we don't really want to go into anywhere around here because this is the remnants of an enormous flood. All that stuff is too young, we're not interested. We want to look at the few patches of really old stuff around this area.
And interestingly enough, the remaining area that was left after making all these constraints is about the size of Western Europe. It was a very small fraction of Mars's surface. So it really didn't give us that much to work with on such a short time scale.
Well, especially because actually trying to fit what's called the landing ellipse, which is an ellipse that designates the uncertainty for a given point where we would land. It's about 100 kilometers long. It's actually quite hard to fit a 100-kilometer ellipse into a space, maybe like this. If you're selected, the stress begins because eventually you'll be responsible, or partly responsible, for the choice for landing site that a €1 billion mission will go to. And if you've led the landing site selection process for a specific site and the rover gets there and it shows things that are not what you said were going to be there, then, or maybe it hits a bunch of rocks that Elliot said weren't going to be there, then that's also pretty stressful.
But maybe you'll hit the jackpot and it'll discover
Absolutely.
Ancient life markers.
Yeah, it's good stress though, I hope.